Okay.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and get started. Alan was going to take a few minutes at the beginning anyway to give a quick overview of how we're going to work this. And so Alan, why don't you go ahead and do that while the last few people are signing in.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, welcome everyone and happy Father's Day. Last Sunday we had a really good turnout for a practice session. And this Sunday we have a whole lot more people. So I wanted to go quickly through the orientation that we did last week, but do it in a much more condensed time frame. And I'll start out by saying that your mic is muted and your camera is off. In order to prevent any background noise that may happen unexpectedly, like dogs barking or music or whatever, from interfering with the experience for everybody else. So we're going to selectively unmute you as we go along, and I'll explain how in a minute.
When you raise your hand,
Alan, so the discussion and voting process will look something like this. The first vote we'll do will be on minutes. So when Marcia's talking, she'll sort of preview what we're going to be voting on. If there's any discussion, Mindy will unmute you in a two-step process, and she'll allow you to talk and then ask you to unmute.
How do they know I'm even there?
Speak, and we'll talk about how that works as well. If there are any questions that come up in chat, Jack is going to handle those questions and help you participate in the discussion that way. When all of those discussion events have happened, we'll pass it back over to, in this case, Marcia, who will call for a vote. And I'll explain how each of these steps works right now. First of all, in order to get recognized the first time around and each time around, you need to raise your hand to talk. And if you look at, if you're on a computer, a PC or Mac, there'll be a black bar, and right in the middle is a raise hand button that you'll click. Mindy's going to be monitoring the panelists, and will see your hand raised, and she will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute your microphone. If you're on an iPhone or an Android device, you'll need to raise your hand by clicking in the lower left corner of your screen where it says raise hand. So now you're recognized. For those of you who will be asking questions by chat, if you're on a PC or Mac, there's a button just to the left of raise hand that opens up the chat window and allows you to type in the chat. And unlike last Sunday, I listened to the feedback, and everyone will be able to see everyone else's chat this time around. So I hope that works well for everybody. If you're on an iPhone or Android device, it's a two-step process to do chat. You're going to click on the participants button first, and then the chat window will appear. You'll still have to click the chat button in the second window that shows up. And most of the attendees will be voting via polls. All of them, as a matter of fact. And this is a sample poll question. It doesn't resemble anything we'll be doing today, but you'll see a window show up on your screen that will list the question and the potential answers. And then once we have the results, I will share the results so everybody can see how the vote went. Now, there are some people who are proxies for other members, or they have additional household members, and we're going to ask those additional members' votes to be done via chat. And Jack will be monitoring that and will help us tally all the results. And then Marcia will announce the grand result of each poll as it happens. So that's our quick overview. And I would like to turn it back over to Andy for a call to order.
Okay, and I do officially call the meeting to order. And I'm going to take the time to make just a few remarks. My President's report went out with the packet, and I know, given the Deathless Prose, that you all read it 2 or 3 times and have it half memorized, but anyway. I do just want to point out that this has been an eventful year, as you all may have noticed. It's not enough that we were going into a transition from Reverend Gay's settled ministry to an interim minister who, fortunately for us, turned out to be Reverend Don. We took on fairly early the idea of we needed to improve our online presence, get that better organized. After a couple of false starts, we were able to start doing that under particularly the leadership of Benita Hogan and with ample collaboration from several other people. The Social Justice Committee also was revitalized and expanded. The leadership of that committee had been in place for a number of years, and at least 2 years ago had started asking for, or saying that they needed to be relieved and new leadership brought on, and Tim Hunter has stepped into that. So it was an eventful year. And then in March, we had a pandemic. So the fact that we had started working on the social media update paid off quicker than we had expected. I want to congratulate the board. They have handled this various things that have been thrown at them with aplomb and competence, and have made the church stronger as that occurred. And I want to congratulate the congregation. You all have been magnificent. You've not complained. You have taken it in stride. You've learned new skills and about Zoom meetings and whatever that maybe you didn't particularly want to at that time, but it's been a surprisingly good year given everything that has gone on, and we've accomplished quite a bit. And one other thing, if you're like me, you're missing seeing your church friends and getting together in person. And Abigail Drescher has organized a way to start to overcome that. There's going to be an ice cream social on the parking lot on Saturday from 2 to 4. The ice cream truck is going to be there. People were asking you to come, maintain social distancing, wear masks, and except when you're eating the ice cream, because it goes easier if you have the mask off. And get to say hi to people that you've been missing for a while. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Don for his welcoming remarks. And Don, you have to unmute.
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy. Well, you stole all my fire.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, the ice cream social is July 11th. Is the
July,
day it's
yeah.
going to be. And that should be a whole lot of fun. But welcome everyone to our first, whoops, I just dropped all my notes. Welcome everyone to our first virtual annual meeting. And if you're like me, you've never done this before. So this ought to be fun. And I'm proud of the leadership, and you will see why once we get into the meeting. But I'm proud of what we've done. I guess the only other, I'm going to be brief because I know this is going to be a long meeting. Just while I've got people's ear, July will be my vacation. So, and I'll be out of town. But anyway, I'd like to turn it over to Marcia, our board secretary.
Thank you, Reverend Don. I declare that we do have a quorum. We have 33 attendees and 10 panelists for 43 people in attendance in this meeting. We actually, at this present time, we have 112 members in our church. So we do indeed have a quorum. I'd like to offer the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the last June's annual meeting. And that said, in the first part of the minutes, it stated that last June we have 177 members and 66 of those were in attendance at the last meeting. So I'm thinking that the 177, I'm not sure if that's the right number. So I'm going to go ahead and check into that and offer a movement to accept the minutes as amended. Right now, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mindy, who will handle the discussion if there's any discussion on those minutes.
Thank you, Marcia. The floor is now open for attendees to raise their hands for discussion. Frank Dennison.
Would you repeat?
Me?
Yes.
Repeat the number. Once we had, according to the minutes.
I didn't understand what Mindy said.
Oh, what Mindy said. Okay.
The floor is open for discussion. If you have any questions or for the discussion, raise your hand.
Thank you.
Frank? What were you part of your discussion?
I have none. I'm trying to leave.
Okay. Vicky Profrock? If you can unmute.
Oh, I just did.
Okay, perfect. And what is the discussion point?
I actually was trying to figure out how to raise my hand later on. Sorry.
Gotcha, no problem.
This is our first vote, so this is almost like a practice. It's going to take longer than any of the rest of them, just because it's our first time trying this as a big group, and we are a large group. We have 43 people in this meeting right now, so and we're all in learning mode. So the first vote's going to take a little bit longer, and by the time we get to number 10, we will be very good at this.
Okay, we have had via chat of move to accept the minutes as amended and a second. So is there any other discussion?
Also, Jan in chat, Jan said, quote, my membership report from June 2019 noted membership at 115.
Thank you, Jan.
That's better.
That sounds more like it. Thank you. Okay, Alan, will you put the poll up, please? Panelists, please remember you need to vote by chat. Okay. Jack, what is the number, please? Well, the motion passes. I know that, but Jack, I need to get the exact number from you, please. We have 30 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstain in the poll. And Jack, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, I have 13 additional in favor, and I would like to remind folks, only in chat register those who are additional in your household and or proxy, and not yourself, because you yourself will be, the primary will be voting via the poll that pops up.
Okay.
Jack, that's not the instructions that I understood from Alan.
Jack has it right. If you are voting for yourself, you vote in the poll. If you're voting for an additional person, either a proxy or other members in your household, you vote by chat for those additional people.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yes. And Richard Dillenbach is visiting us by phone, and Richard needs to be unmuted so that we can get his voice vote.
I already voted, I thought.
Okay.
I'm watching.
All right.
I'm
Oh,
on
you're
the,
watching. Oh,
I'm not on the phone.
excellent, Richard. Welcome. Thank you for that. Okay. You're all
Sure.
set.
All right. Well, we made it through 1. This ought to go a little bit quicker. The next vote is to approve the minutes of our February 23rd special congregational meeting. So I'm going to move that we approve those minutes and turn the floor again once over to Mindy. See if there's any discussion.
Floor is open for discussion. Please raise your hand. There is no discussion from the attendees.
Jack, is there any discussion in the chat?
Unmute.
We just have a move to approve and a second.
Okay. Alan, will you put the poll up, please?
And again, panelists, please vote in the chat.
Alan, can you put the results of the poll, please, up for me?
We have 81% reporting so far. Previous
Okay.
vote, we had 97, so I'm going to leave it up just a little bit longer.
Okay.
And I'll cut this off at the 1 minute point and I'll share. We've got, here we go, end poll. And share results.
Okay. 28 in favor, 1 abstain. Jack?
We have 12 approve and 1 abstained.
Okay. Motion passes 40 with 40 in approval. And that's all I have, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Andy for our slate of officers.
And then,
We have a question from Vicki Prokop.
okay, Vicki, unmute and ask.
I just unmuted. I'm having trouble figuring out how to vote for my proxy for David. I try to hit the little chat button to vote for him, but I don't think that's working.
should be a line right at the very bottom of the chat screen that you can type into.
Oh, I don't have a keyboard. One of my problems is my iPad is showing me a keyboard.
Oh,
Vicki, if you tap into the area at the bottom of the chat window where it says type message here, your keyboard should pop up on your iPad.
And then I just type in yes or no.
Type in the name of the person and yes or no. Yeah,
Oh, the name of the person. Okay, got it. Thank you.
you're welcome.
yeah, that's important. We want you to be able to vote for this next thing up, because the next thing up is the slate of officers, and I'm going to bring those up on the my screen. If I can find where there they are. Okay, the officers for the coming year are for President Quentin Davis, for President-elect Alan George, for Treasurer Stephen Heil. We will not be voting on a secretary because Marcia will be serving out her final year of a 2-year term. So this comes as with a move and second, since it comes from the board. So it's now open for discussion, and I'm going to unshare if I can figure out how to do that. Or Alan, do you need to unshare me?
Actually, I can do that, but if you slide your pointer to the top of the screen and then come down, you should see a red button next to that.
Yeah, I see it. Okay, thanks. Okay. So Mindy, discussion.
Floor is open for discussion. We appear to have no discussion.
Margaret,
Hold that
has her
thought.
hand up.
Margaret Tuck.
There should be names for nominating committee and Memorial Garden Committee. Are we voting on those later or now?
Memorial Garden is later. And
Nominating committee.
nominating committee is fully staffed, as we understand it.
Yeah, the nominating committee was voted on at the mid-year meeting.
Okay.
What about endowment?
Fully staffed. With the exception of adding, no, there are no exceptions. Endowment is fully staffed.
Okay.
No more hands raised. Jack, I'll turn it over to you.
No comments.
Okay, so Alan, if you could put the poll up.
Okay, we're at 93% of people voting. I'll close this off at the 1 minute point coming up now.
Okay, we have 32 in favor, no opposed and no abstain. Jack, how about in the chat?
We have 17 yes and 1 abstain.
Okay. Motion passed. Welcome to the new officers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Alan, you're up with the budget.
Actually, we've got Lynn Dennison first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have that down. I have it reversed, actually.
Okay.
I have her coming up next, but go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, this is the pledge team report. Let me share, give me a second to share my screen. Let's see, pardon my clumsiness. Well, I can't, I've clicked, oh, I see, I have to click on share. There we go. Is it showing?
It's about to. There we
Okay.
go. Yep.
All righty. So the members of the pledge team were Frank Curl, Pam Hayward, Marcia Frank, and myself as the data collector. However, it takes many people, many more people than that to do a pledge drive. And so we had over 20 people involved. They were making contact with as many people as possible. And the board was a part of this. And I have to say that their support and guidance is really greatly appreciated, and it makes us more effective as well. The kickoff Sunday started on March 1st when we received about half of our pledges. The sheltering for the pandemic began about halfway through March, which of course disrupted many of our lives and likely affected our results. Nonetheless, we were able to raise $180,400 in pledges from 93 households. Our 17 new pledges made up the difference in our 15 lost pledges, and the 27 increased pledges did not quite make up the difference for our 14 decreased pledges. The detailed report that you see on the screen is available in the full annual report, which is online. This report is of May the 20th and doesn't reflect any adjustments since then. There were a few, I think, but not a lot. One interesting number is that about a fourth of our pledges come from friends, while the rest come from member households. So many thanks to both our members and friends for supporting our church. And I'll turn this over to the moderator to take any questions.
Okay, Mindy, do we have any questions on this?
Graham Palmer says we cannot see the page.
I can't see it.
Yeah, Alice can't see it here.
It says I am screen sharing.
Pam Hayward says she can see it.
I see it fine. So
Yeah,
maybe it's the view the person has it in, maybe? I don't know.
We have a question from Margaret Tuck.
Hi, I'm just adding that I can see it on the screen, but it sort of obliterates the chat box on the side somehow. So I don't know if moving it left to right might help. You know, moving your screen.
You can temporarily close the chat window by clicking on the chat button. That might make it easier.
And what I find is when someone shares a screen, I need to move my cursor down to the bottom and re-hit the chat window and pull up another separate chat. Pull up the chat window separately.
Yeah, obviously some can see it and some can't, but we had the verbal report, so let's go ahead. Mindy, do you have any other comments or questions other than about being able to see it?
And this is just an informational report, requires no action.
There's no discussion.
Okay.
I will stop sharing.
So.
And mute myself.
Okay, and we did go out of order, but Alan, you're up with the budget now.
Matt, over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sir.
you're fine.
And can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, this is the budget that's proposed. I'll get to that later in my discussion, but just wanted to show the document. This was provided in the UU media that was part of the notice of the meeting. This is an updated version of it that came with a later notice of the meeting that went out Thursday. So this has changed somewhat. I will note in a follow-on to Lynn's discussion that we have 1,000 more in pledge income than what she reported, but she did say her report was from the end of May, so this is what came in afterward. So that's the number we'll be working from. Now I'm going to share another document. Okay. What I'm going to address is the state of the finances at this point of the year. The financial information we have is through May 31st, so it's 11 out of the 12 months of the year. Our fiscal year is from July 1st to June 30th. This part, and then I will discuss the balance. I will address this first, performance to our budget, and then secondly, the balance sheet, which tells the health, the financial health of the church. This part, item 1, is for information only. When I'm done with that, we'll move on to the proposed budget. This will require a vote. All budgets require a vote of the congregation. So state of the finances, first, performance to the budget. We are at the 92% point in the year, which is 11 out of 12 months. Every budget has an income side and an expense side. We determine the expenses, and then we've developed the income to cover those expenses. This first column right here on both charts is the budget for this fiscal year. And this part right here shows the monthly drain. So if it should occur, this is, this right here covers shows 1 month's worth of the total. What really we need to pay attention to are these next 2 columns, which show the performance to the year. So this is where we should be for the year, this column in income, and this is where we stand based on actual. So 11 out of 12 months for income is 172,000 in pledge income. In actuals, we're at 165,000. So we're about 7,000 short. So this number shows it percentage-wise. We should be at 92%. We're at 88%. Plate, we're doing very well with plate, which is a good thing, especially considering the virtual services. 2 areas where we've performed very poorly is in fundraising and gifts of honor. We had high goals with 7,000 and 4,500 respectively, and we've come in at 845 and 2,000. Of course, COVID has impacted that, but that doesn't speak for the first 3 months of 3 quarters of the year. Rent, we're doing pretty much online. It's been a bit impacted by COVID. Other income, we're doing incredibly well. This covers 2 factors. The first factor is at the start of every fiscal year, we collect on the past year's pledges that came up short. And we've got about 4,500 of this came from that. The remainder came from getting a Paycheck Protection Program loan, which will convert to a grant. So we received roughly $8,000 from that, and that's part of the CARES Act, which is the COVID relief. So for the year, we're at 90%. We should be at 92% at this point. We're at 90%. That's the bad news. On expenses, I'm not going to go through every one of these lines, but we are doing better than normal in several categories. First, if you look at professional expenses for the minister, the RE director, and things like the medical benefit, these are use or lose type funds. We've come under on those, so that's a benefit. We also came under on the capital expense, that's our loan. We've adjusted our loan to a lower amount, and that was around the March timeframe. And so we've received some benefit of it this year, but we'll also see that benefit going forward. And committee budgets are down as well. A large part of that's due to COVID. The church is not functioning. So the bottom line is we're at 88 at expenses. So the good news is, although we're under in income at 90%, we're also under at income by an even greater percent. In expenses by an even greater extent. So that means at this point in time, we're at a plus in our budget. So if you go down here, the 198.4 is where we are here. And the 193.1 is where we are here. And that means we're 5,300 ahead at this point. I have to do a projection for the last month of the year. I'm projecting that we'll get 10,000 in income and 18,000 in expenses. 18,000 in expenses is roughly our average for every month. Most pledges have come in. There's going to be, as I mentioned, an effort in July to collect on last year's pledges. I'll make a reach out right now to everybody on this in this meeting. If you haven't completed your pledge, please take a look at that, and we'd appreciate if you do complete it. But based on projections right now, I'm expecting 208.5 in income and 211 in expenses by year end, which means a $2,500 loss for the year. Next page is, so that was performance to budget. This is the state of the finances. We started the year with 50,000 in cash. We're now at 53.5 in cash, so we've got an increase in cash. When it comes to liabilities, they come in several forms. This 10,000 is just what is incurred between when we get our statements from the bank and what's incurred from that moment until I do the reports. So we've got roughly 11,000 in those. Restricted funds, these are where we've committed some of this money to a special purpose. I'll go over those on the next slide. We have the money, it's just that we've committed it, so it shows as a liability. And then finally, this 5,300, this is this number down here where we're ahead. So it is cash we have, but it's committed cash. It's committed to our budget. So if you add up these three numbers, that totals this 37.8. If you subtract this 37.8 from this 53.5, you get 15.6. That's our free money. That's money that's not assigned to anything. So if you're looking for what is our church savings position, this is it, about $15,500. If remember I said on this slide that we're roughly 18,000 a month in expenses. So we're 1 month in expenses is what we have in reserve. You see, we started the year at 24. We're down to 15.5, which is a 7.5 difference, or 8.5 difference, excuse me. Here's how that played out, and this is just a rough order of magnitude. It's not an exact science. We had some window repairs at the beginning of the year that were not budgeted for. We had some minister moving expenses that had not been budgeted for. The adjacent property, before we sold it, we were at an expense rate of about $6,000 a year. We sold it halfway through the year, so we incurred about $3,000 there. And then at the February meeting, we committed $10,000 to the ministerial search. So these three here have been spent. This one has not been spent, but it's been committed. So it falls up here under the restricted funds. So that's 25. On the income side, unexpected was what we cleared on the property after paying back the $45,000 to endowment. So subtract the 11.5 from the 25, you roughly get this right here, draw down from 24 to 15.5. And the last page of the for information only is the restricted funds. Just gives you a flavor. This MYMF stands for multi-year maintenance fund. It's a rainy day fund. So if there's a breakdown in the church, then we can draw from this fund. We actually drew a couple thousand from the fund this year. Here shows the 10,000 we committed to the ministerial search. You can see other things, the archival project, the security officer. This number, if we did not have COVID, we could expect this would have been close to zero because we would have spent it on that officer that was parked outside. Since we weren't holding services, we haven't done that, so that money's still there. So these are just some examples. And before I pass it on to Mindy for any questions on the for information only part, just want to make a huge shout out to the endowment committee. It really stepped up this year. We've had roof repairs, HVAC replacements, the freeing up of some money that endowment had contributed that we could no longer find the purpose for it. That went to our bottom line. That helped that 15,500 number to be that high. And then they also, you'll see, committed to the budget. So without them, the church would be in a very difficult state. So I just, a huge shout out to endowment, and I'll now pass it on to Mindy for any questions.
Floor is now open for discussion. We have no hand raised.
Okay, then I'll move on to the for approval part of the this meeting, and that's the proposed budget for next year. This will start on July 1st and carry on through June 30th of next year. So we've got plate at 9,000 versus the 10,000 we had committed this year. Just dropped down a bit because don't know how COVID will play out, but right now it's looking like it's having no effect. So if there's an underperformance anywhere else, this is an area that potentially could be an overperformer to help balance that out. The other income, this covers two things. One is, I mentioned those July phone calls to people that had not completed their pledges to try and collect outstanding pledges. So part of it is for that. We expect about 2/3 of this 7,100 to come from that. The other is the carryover of that PPP loan. We got enough funds for 3 months. We've paid May and June, and then July will go into the next fiscal year. So that's where that number is coming from. I mentioned that we did poorly in the fundraising and gift of honor line items. So we've dropped down significantly in both of those to more attainable goals. We've got the 181.4 in pledge income. Now, Lynn mentioned that the prior year we were at a 182 number. That is true, but for the budget last year, I'm just assuming that 5,000 was added on top of that with the hope of attaining an extra 5,000 in this category, and that just didn't happen. Rent, we're going just a little bit lower to take into account impacts possibly from COVID. I mentioned endowment, how it came through. We could not get to a balanced budget without endowment. The request was put in. We got the recommendation, which the board approved and which we will pass on to the congregation for approval that we access this endowment contribution that comes from the income portion of that fund. Otherwise, the choices are, we're on a path, it's just too big a hole. If we don't use endowment funds, the only other alternative is really to consider cutting a member of staff. Now, when you get down to expenses, there are some increases in the compensation side, but there are no raises for any member. The only reason we have an increase is last year the minister was from August through June, 11 months. Now we'll have the minister for 12 months. So that's now reflected in the numbers. I think everybody in this congregation would love to be able to give raises to our staff, just not possible based on the income numbers. Capital expenses down because I said, as I mentioned earlier, we've been able to reduce the amount we have to pay out monthly by extending the loan by about 4 years. Membership dues going up a bit. Utilities and office expenses pretty much the same. Insurance is down a bit. It actually has gone up, but this number also included insurance for the house which we've sold. So even though it's gone up, that portion has been subtracted, so it shows as a lower number. And then committee numbers have been drastically cut in order to make budget. So we have a balanced budget, which means we don't have to go into church savings, of 219.5 in income versus 219.5 in expenses. And now I open the floor up for questions.
Floor is now open for discussion. There appears to be no discussion. I'll turn it over to Jack for chat discussion.
I don't see anything here. I'll just, a little side note, Graham Palmer said they can only see a small area of the document. Margaret Tuck said, great job. And as well as others did as well. That's it so far.
Well, this was board approved, so as Andy noted, it comes with a motion in a second, so we can proceed to a vote. I will stop sharing.
Floor is open for motion and second.
That's been done. Doesn't need a motion and second, as Matt said. So we're ready to vote, and the vote is up on the screen. While that's going on, I want to second the people that responded on the chat. Matt has done an awesome job this year, and appreciate that, how much he's helped us out. So. Okay.
We have results.
I have 17 yes. I don't see any nays or abstains.
And we had 32 in favor, so the budget has been accepted. Thank you.
And so we've got 49 in favor.
Yes, altogether 49 in favor, no opposed, and no abstains.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
One comment was, can the endowment income be spent last or only if needed?
That's not really how it works, but I mean, we already had a vote. I guess you could do a motion that says if we come in 10,000 ahead, that it be returned to endowment. I think that would be fine, but it's really up to the next board to manage.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be left to the next board as to how to deal with that. But Quentin, take note that that was a request, and be aware of that as you're looking at next year. Okay.
Yeah, Chris Drescher's hand is up.
Okay.
Okay, I just had a question about what the plan was for increasing fundraising, because I noticed even the number that we had this year was less than a third of the proposed budget for this coming year. So I was just curious if there was any update on that.
There are no specific plans. There is a fundraising committee. Last year, that committee was basically not functional for reasons I won't go into. But this year, we're expecting that they will have plans, programs that will help us meet the numbers that were proposed in the budget.
There's a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tim Hunter had suggested at a board meeting doing a fundraising breakfast at the church for a special event such as the start of the school year. And we had some discussion about maybe doing that quarterly. That could potentially, COVID allowing, potentially allow for a big chunk of that fundraising amount being achieved.
Yeah, there was also a suggestion that maybe we could have a invite members from the church to do a joint garage sale or whatever on the parking lot and take 10% of the income from that. So there are suggestions out there. Vicki, I think you have a question.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. You're unmuted. I thought maybe you had a.
Oh, I thought I muted myself. I'm having a little trouble with this. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work on this.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing is introduction of the General Assembly delegates. General Assembly starts this coming week. At the mid-year meeting, we had voted Alan and Benita Hogan as our delegates. Benita has found it necessary to withdraw from that. And Marcia Frank has agreed to be the second delegate. Now it's going to be a virtual meeting, so they're going to be doing it by computer. Technically, we need a vote on that, and I don't think Alan has that prepared. Do you, Alan?
No, I don't. I can try to do that while you're addressing the matter.
If you could do that, I would appreciate it. Why don't we table that for right now while you're working on that, and Quentin, can you go ahead and talk about the bylaws?
Happy to. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Nope. All right, do you see the slide deck for the proposed bylaws changes? Anybody? Okay, great. Get up my notes on my other screen here. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so the bylaws changes will be presented in blocks. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them. The blocks really indicate things that are very similar in nature, and they fairly well go in order of the document as well. So the first block is simply clerical changes. So there's verbiage such as officers of the congregation is replaced with officers of the board. Council is replaced with committee council throughout the document. So these are formatting changes or clerical changes to make sure that we are consistent in our verbiage. There's no meaning or intention or any responsibilities that are modified in this. We also, since we are moving to an online presentation of all of our documents and committee charters and things like that, we're looking to add hyperlinks and continue doing so into the future. So that's block one. And let me stop there. I'll present each block once and then open it up for discussion and questions. And then we'll vote on that block and then move to the next one. So at this point, let me pass it back to Mindy to see if there's any questions or comments.
Are we supposed to have a black screen?
No, you should have a screen that says block one, clerical changes.
Negative.
Can I get some confirmation from anyone else? Is everyone else seeing?
No.
Yes, I'm seeing block one.
We'll see block one.
Well, all of the panelists seen it. I think that we're having that same problem. Some of the people, some of the participants see it. Some of the people, participants don't or see a very tiny block on the screen that is very difficult to read. It's a technical problem that we really haven't been able to take care of, and we apologize for that. But I'm seeing a number of people reporting they can see it. I know Alice sitting here next to me can't see the one on her screen. So we're just going to have to deal with it. And those of you who have difficulty seeing it or are not able to see it at all, just pay close attention to the verbal description.
We have a question from Vicki Profrock.
Okay. Mindy, could you read that for me? I have too many things open on my slides right now.
Read which thing?
Mindy.
Question?
Oh, it's a verbal. She just needs to unmute.
Okay.
Let me jump. Jenny Malicia has a suggestion. People using phones are having some problem. She says folks on phones should be able to zoom in to make text bigger, or at least that's how it's working on her phone. So just mentioning that.
Thank you.
Okay, Vicki. If you can unmute. Vicki, can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. What's your question?
I don't have a question. my question was, I think I'm going to stop trying to vote by proxy because this is screwing everything up. So I'm just going to vote for me. And you can count me twice if you want to, because I know David's going to agree with me. Andy, I heard that.
You better.
Okay, and there are no more discussion from here. Jack, do you have anything on chat?
Nothing else on chat.
In that case, then, Alan, if you could go ahead and bring up the vote for block 1, we'll let everybody vote either on the text box that pops up or on your chat as appropriate for you. Okay, do we have the votes in? Jack, do you have a count? You'll need to unmute.
Including David Profrock, we have 16 yes and no abstains, no no's.
Okay, 46 in favor.
Oh, make it 17.
Okay, 47 in favor. So clerical bylaw change accepted by the congregation.
All right, thank you. Justin, Marcia, would you please count me as an abstain for all of these?
Not so much.
That'll make my life easier.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to, I can do that.
Yeah. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so moving on to block 2, these are 2 items regarding proxy votes. The first one to allow us, I think we were supposed to do this one first. Proxy votes can come through electronic or phone verification as opposed to just a signature, or as opposed to only a signature. The way that we've always done it, our world is changing, so this allows us to have proxy verification with the secretary electronically or by phone if needed. The second item you see on your screen is that a member may hold no more than 3 proxy votes during one meeting. And so the yellow is highlighted, shows you what wording has been added. And so we wanted to make clear that if in our next annual meeting, if you have proxy votes this time, you could have them again next time as well. So let me go ahead and ship that over to Mindy for any questions or comments.
Floor is open for discussion. There are no hands raised. Jack, is there anything in chat?
No, nothing here.
Okay, then I'll ask Alan, if you could go ahead and put up block 2 voting panel, that'd be great. Jack?
Count 16, 17 yes, 1 abstain for Quentin.
Okay, and we have 29 in favor, and so motion passes.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to block 3. Block 3 has to do with officer responsibilities. Again, the changes you see are any wording that is stricken is obviously removed. and the board is recommending anything in highlighted yellow to be added. So for the president, the change is, there are two changes here. So I'll talk about those separately. The first one is that the board president is, we are recommending that they are no longer an ex officio member of all committees. And the reason being that we have a lot of committees, and that's a lot of time for the board president. Over the last year, we've been trying to get together a better process where we have liaisons to the board and we spread that workload out across the board. And so you'll see that come up later in the bylaws as well. So while the board president is being removed, or we are asking that the board president be removed from a commitment to every committee, we'll also be asking you to approve that there is a board liaison to every committee, just not necessarily the president. The second thing that you see in number 1 is that the board president may request a report from not just committee council chairs, but also ad hoc committees or other groups that they might need communication from. The second item on the screen is for president-elect. This is simply changing the word from a periodic report to a monthly report so that it's expected for the board president-elect to communicate what's going on with the committees each month, and that there's a lot going on, and so we thought that was important. The third item on the screen is that of the secretary's duty to educate the congregation about our membership. The wording was a little odd in that it had said that we needed, that the congregation would approve the membership changes, but since that's not really how we operate, it's really more of an information only. And so the secretary would provide a count of the membership to be presented for information at the congregational meeting. The last item that you see on the screen is regarding the officers as a whole, our notification timing to the congregation about a called meeting. And so a called meeting would be one which is not the standard meeting. This would be the standard monthly meeting. This would be an extra meeting. And so we ask that we have 3 days to provide the congregation with notice of a board meeting, with the exception of an emergency. So given these times, we thought that that would be an appropriate wording. I will stop here and ask if there are any questions or comments.
Let me make just 1 or 2 comments. Note that on the president's not being an ex officio member of the committees, the presidents for the last couple of years have not attended those on a regular basis anyway. If they want to attend a meeting, as with any congregation member, they can attend that meeting and participate and ask questions as needed. You know, the thing about the called meetings, this doesn't happen often, but is basically a way to deal with unexpected events like the pandemic might have required a called meeting to deal with some of those kinds of things. So it's, we've not had one in the last 2 years anyway. Okay, go ahead. Mindy, take over.
The floor is now open for discussion, and our first question is from Marika.
Hello, I'm a fairly new member of the church, and so I was struck by the presentation of the budget that about 30% of the income of the church was coming from friends. And so when the secretary gives a report of membership count, has the congregation ever also included a report of friends count? How are the friends of the church incorporated into the reporting of our congregation?
Great question. Marcia, do you have a response for that?
No, I actually don't. Members can vote. I think members friends are included in the report that we do for the pledge drive. And so they're noticed in that.
So
as far as do we keep a count? No, I don't think we have an official account, but they are we have them in the book. We have them in our, in the address book. We have them, and some people are members and some friends are listed.
Marcia?
But as far as yeah, go ahead.
In the database that Laura keeps, she keeps friends, and then there are also pledging friends. Those are two different categories in the database that she keeps. I believe there are a few other categories too, but the main categories are member, pledging, friend, and friend.
Well, how do we determine?
Friend in the directory. Friend in the directory.
How do we determine when a friend gets added to the directory is a question that I would have.
They ask to be.
Oh, okay.
I think that's how.
Okay. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to give some attention to the friends of the church who are accounting for, I thought it was about 30% of our income on pledges. So
not income, but numbers of people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
not income, but it is the number. The number of people that are pledging is about a fourth of the pledgers, and they are indicated in our database as pledging friends.
Thank you, Lynn.
So my only comment was we might consider saying a report of membership and pledging friends count, something like that. If it's a portion of the congregation that we could maybe give some attention to, that's all.
Well, maybe that's something we can take up at one of our upcoming board meetings, so as to how that can be addressed to where friends can feel more included in this process. Is that what?
Maybe that's what I had in mind. Thanks.
Yeah. The thing about this particular meeting is that we had to do the voting thing, and there just wasn't any way in a webinar format to be able to include friends in this particular format. So maybe we'll be able to work that out even in the future, because normally friends can attend the meetings. Just this one, because of the voting, it just wasn't couldn't be handled practically at all. So
you did beautifully to get us as far as we are.
Oh, thank you.
Hello. We're not recognizing people when they wish to speak, I don't think. You two are having a discussion and no one else is getting recognized. This is Margaret. My comments are that this counting of members dates back to the time when the congregation was required to report annual membership numbers to the UUA, which then determined the amount of contribution that the church made to the UUA. So in the sense, that's why there is a business of counting membership and keeping an accurate count. And the original intent was that the secretary of the board is responsible for the accurate membership count, but normally they work with the membership committee to get the count. And really it means also that you count members, because members have to determine the number of members, determine when you've got a quorum at a meeting.
Yeah, we did follow that process today.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why we're talking about a count of the members. The secretary is responsible. The other concern I have while I've got the floor is the number one, where you talk about committee council chairs. I don't know who you mean by, there's only one committee council chair. There's committee chairs, but there's not committee council chairs, I don't think. So that's not clear up there. And then I am concerned when you have a notification of a called meeting of the congregation and you give 3 days notice. I think that is not sufficient. I recall that the notification for an annual meeting, I think, was 7 days or 14 days. And you definitely require longer notification if you expect people to vote on items of business like the newly elected members, the budget that we're doing today. I don't think 3 days.
Margaret, let me clarify a little bit of that. I think, well, first let me address the comment about the number 1, the president, committee council chairs. I would be more than willing to accept a friendly amendment with wording change there.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
That seems like a pretty easy thing to take care of right away. So if you wouldn't mind putting that in a chat or someone else could, that would be great. And then we can, when we do bring up the panel to vote, everyone can see, and I can make that change live so that everyone can see what that would look like. With regard to the called meeting, that's a called meeting of the board, not, so I'm sorry that that was not clear. This is a called meeting of the board. So if the board felt like there was an emergency that they needed to come together, this is not a called meeting of the congregation. So any meeting of the congregation would still have those 7 or 14 days, I believe. And so this is if the board felt as though there was a need to come together quickly to make some decisions. And this is much in response to the pandemic kind of situation that we're in right now, that we could call a meeting, any person on the board could call a meeting of the board. But that board meeting would still be open to the entire congregation. But in this case, there would be a shorter window of notification since the intent is for an emergency, a very odd kind of occurrence.
So the wording needs to be changed, a call meeting of the board to the congregation. Is that what you're trying to say?
We have more comments. Should I go ahead and, in case they are related to this topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Our next one is Vicki Profrock.
Oh, I was just typing it to you. I apologize, and I hope this doesn't mess up the quorum, but we're expecting a call from our son in New York for Father's Day, and I really need to leave. I didn't want to just, check out on you, but.
Thanks.
Hi, Vicki.
So is it okay? Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you very much for your participation, and for we're really glad that you were able to come today. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Other discussions?
Well, wait, she is. I believe you crossed out chairs, and I think the proposal was to cross out council.
Council.
My apologies. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Need shares of
the and I believe the comments that I've been monitoring here, I think they've been echoed in the verbal discussion, and the changes that you've made there in blue reflect the amendments that they proposed.
Okay. Just for clarification, if anyone else, if what I have done is not what is addressing the concern, please make note of that now. Raise your hand and help us out.
Jan Parsons.
You have,
there you go.
It's still, I still think the fourth item isn't very clear at all. a called meeting of the board, what you need to say is the congregation needs to receive at least 3 days notice in advance of any called meeting of the board. Stop.
Jan, you had a comment?
Yes, I'm going back to the committee council chairs. That sentence refers to committee chairs of the committee council. It doesn't need to be changed. Did you hear me?
Committee,
Under president, may request reports from the committee council chairs. Those are chairs of the committees. That's how I read that statement.
That's how it was intended, but I think what Margaret is saying.
there's no, but there's a council comprised of committee chairpersons.
Yes, so this is the chairs of the committees that form the committee council. They are the committee council chairs.
Okay, I'll leave it then. It just doesn't sound.
So it sounds like there is.
It's just confusing.
There's disagreement about this particular friendly amendment. There's some for and against. I don't know, Alan, if you have a suggestion on how to handle that particular issue. I'll let you think about that while I asked Margaret to restate or put in the chat the sentence that she recommended. And in the meantime, I'm trying to find
let me comment on the first thing about the committee chairs. I think striking council makes it clear, because in fact the president can request a report from any committee, whether they happen to be part of the council or an ad hoc committee or whatever. So just leaving it as committee chairs makes it fine.
We have a comment from Pam Hayward.
I was just thinking if we could say chairs who are represented on the committee council or who serve as members of the committee council, if the committee council seems important in any way to mention. But I think Andy's is probably even simpler.
So I'll note that the intent of the committee council is to have, my understanding, is to have representation by all committees, and you'll see and changes in these in today's meeting to make sure, like our standing committees were not included in that bylaws, but of course they are part of that in our behavior. So my personal view would be that taking the council out would still include all chairs.
Yep.
We have a comment from Denise Trina.
No, I was going to agree with either leaving it the way it is, or as I think it was Pam that said, committee committee members, because it's one council and each of the members are chairs from committees. So I'm suggesting leaving it like it is or using that word member. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Margaret Tuck wrote out in the chat the proposed changed wording for the last portion, the last paragraph.
Let me copy that for everyone. So So Margaret, can I assume that you are making a friendly amendment to change this sentence in yellow to the one in blue?
Yes, I think it makes it clearer what you're talking about at least.
Do you mind if I take out the word special, since called is our official word?
Well, you've left out the emergency part, so you want to add something about an emergency. Any emergency call, except in an emergency? I don't know.
Yeah, that has to be there.
Yeah, except in cases of emergency.
I move that we accept that amendment.
For a second?
Just to be clear, on the first portion, the change, we're the vote for and the amendment, and second is to remove the word council.
Correct.
Yeah, since it's a friendly amendment and the proposal of the change has accepted that, it does not require a vote. It can just be accepted, and then we vote on the changed wording as we vote on the entire package.
Thank you, Andy.
We have a comment from Amanda Randolph.
Sorry. Hi, actually Barbara posted it in the chat and I agree. She noticed that you didn't put at least 3 days. You just put receive 3 days notice.
Thank you. I'm assuming that's okay with you, Margaret?
Yeah, that's fine. I was typing quickly.
I understand.
Thank you.
Good catch, thank you. Anything from you, Jack?
I think that's it.
All right, in that case, I think that we are ready to vote on block 3.
Quentin,
oh,
there
yes.
is a question from Ann and Greg Sutherland.
Say whatever.
Hi, I just sent a note, and Jack didn't say anything, but Greg and I agree with Andy that the simplistic of the wording in paragraph 1, we feel like that we're in favor of that.
And that's what we're voting.
Okay, thank you. I think that is the changes in blue and now and yellow are what we will be voting on. There we go.
We have 29 votes so far. 29 in favor, 1 abstain. Jack?
18 yes. I don't see any nays or abstains.
$13?
18.
18, thank you. Okay. Sharing bylaw change, board officer responsibility pass, accepted by the congregation as written.
Thank you.
No, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
No.
Block 4, sorry, has to do, let me make this bigger. Block 4 has to do with the wording that will make our bylaws in alignment with our changes made in January. our mid-year meeting. So we had changed the size of the board. These changes are to align with that. So members of the board may serve no more than 6 consecutive years, since we're now on 2-year terms. And a quorum of the board consists of a simple majority of the members, 4, and must include an officer of the board and an at-large member. So since we did away with the executive committee, but we do still have officers of the board, that wording has changed simply to be consistent. Are there any questions on this item, or on these 2 items rather? Or comments?
So someone could stand the board. Floor is open for discussion.
I guess.
I have no hands raised. Jack, do you have anything in chat?
Nothing in chat.
Okay. Alan, I think we're ready to go ahead and vote on block 4.
Okay, with 30 voting, 29 in favor, 1 abstention. Jack?
19 in favor, no nays or abstentions.
Thank you. Board terms and quorum accepted by the members of the congregation as written. Thank you.
Next, block 5 will include a couple different slides, so if you'll bear with me, I'll go through them one at a time. This section is added at the preamble of section 5, and so I'll just read it out. So if you have your board, the bylaws with you, rather, just please look at the lines 288 to 292. This is to clarify committee. The rest of these are actually to clarify committee membership and responsibilities. Committee memberships, chairs, and contact information shall be kept by the board secretary and updated at the annual meeting. Changes to committee membership shall occur only at the annual meeting, although cases for exception may be approved by the board. Updates to committee membership should be announced to the congregation by newsletter, email, and/or at the congregational meeting, at a congregational meeting. And so the purpose of this addition is to communicate more clearly and have a more standardized process. Much of this is what we do already, but we want to make clear that those committee changes are kept by the secretary in addition to our membership, and also that those changes roll over at the fiscal year, just like our other memberships do, and are appropriately communicated to the congregation. The next here, and you all can kind of direct me back if you have questions about different ones of these. The composition of the Memorial Garden Committee will consist of a minimum of 2 members with staggered terms of 3 years. And this is simply added because our other standing committees have the same information with regard to who makes up that committee in the bylaws. This was just an oversight, and we've kind of done this forever, but as a way to make it solid and in black and white, we've added the same into the Memorial Garden Committee. Next, non-elected committees should have at least 3 members serving the congregation and one ex officio non-voting board member to serve as liaison. So this is what I referred to earlier, whereas the president wouldn't be the non-voting ex officio member, but a board liaison would be. So adding that into our bylaws. We've also added that friends of the church could be committee members in addition to our volunteers and board appointees. And actually what I'll do just for clarity, let me stop there and take any questions on either of these two slides.
Floor is open for discussion. Pamela Hayward.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I suspect that's not the intent of that first block change there on block 5. But because the president-elect is the chair of the committee council, at least traditionally, that has been the person who has updated and figured out who was chairs of committees, et cetera, because they would be doing that as part of their role. Would that be changing, or is it just that the secretary would be putting it on paper?
The latter. So the intent is that the record would be kept by the secretary. So just like the membership is kind of owned by the membership committee, but that information is also passed to the secretary for record keeping, this would do the same, so that the secretary would have those records and they would be readily available.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, great question.
Our next question is from Margaret Tuck.
My concern is that you're duplicating information. If you're a committee chair, you are a member and you're in the church directory, which is kept up to date by the office manager. Is there a reason for wanting to keep separate information about,
We actually have not had the full committee membership in the directory. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory and what this was generated for was that the membership was not kept by the admin would have it, but through communication by the board. So this would also allow for the secretary to keep documented any changes that happened in mid-year, like we've had this year. Someone might step off or move or something like that. Then that information is given to the secretary for record keeping.
My personal opinion is you're giving yourself a lot of extra work. You want to do it. I'm not.
I think the benefit, it is, I agree, it is more work, but it's also, it can be frustrating to try to find out who are on the different committees and who is responsible. And so this was an attempt to try to make that more clear. Any other comments on this or the second?
We have one comment from Ann and Greg Sutherland.
This is Greg. On that first slide, if you go back to that, it says changes to committee membership shall only occur at the annual meeting. Does that mean that if someone wants to join the Social Justice Committee, they can't do it without approval from the board? That doesn't make any sense.
So the intention was not to restrict. There are other members, other committees like the building and grounds that are pretty much open membership. And so I don't think that this would restrict open membership like that. And I suspect that
that's what it says, though. It says changes to committee membership shall only occur at annual meetings.
And they can also be approved by the board. So if there was someone who was adding to that committee, but not just wanting to do those activities, then the way this is written is that there would be the ability for the membership chair, or excuse me, for the social justice chair or any other chair to submit a renewal of the membership list to the board.
So it does mean what it says. You've got to get board approval before you can get on the membership committee or whatever committee you want to get on. Okay. That seems like a lot of extra work for the board, but okay. That's fine.
Jack?
I'm voting against it.
If I'm not, tell me if I'm mistaken, but I think the point is to say that if there's a change to the committee membership, we don't need to call a congregational meeting to vote on it. The board will be able to make that change, and then the voting will occur only at the annual meeting.
Yeah, this actually doesn't distinguish between standing committees and non-elected committees. So anything like social justice where you have non-elected committees wouldn't be approved by the congregation in the first place. So this doesn't change that. But if there's an amendment to the wording, I'm happy to share that for everyone to see.
We have a comment from Pam Hayward.
Yeah, sorry to keep jumping in, former board member, so I can't help it. But I think what Quentin and Greg were just saying is this is talking about elected committee members and chairs or something. So I think if we could just throw in something that says like committee membership chairs of elected groups or something, because clearly anyone could join non-elected committees at any point.
Margaret Tuck?
I think that would help clarify what you're trying to say here. I was assuming, like Greg read, that you were talking about all committees, which can be very informal to very formal. So you're asking for a lot of work on unnecessary work, in my opinion.
Okay. So am I hearing...
Jack, did we have anything on chat?
Chat comment is the same as that you're talking about.
Okay, we have a question from Graham Palmer.
Thank you for the question, Marika. That's the precise reason we want to make this available.
Okay.
Graham, can you unmute?
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, it's Chris. I was just saying a lot of the committees that are not elected committees are very fluid. People come and go. And if every time people come in and you have to take it to the board and then that person comes for a while and then somebody else comes, they're in and out a lot of times. So that doesn't seem very practical. But if you're looking at the elected committees, then that definitely is more practical to expect to have it go through the board.
Okay, one comment. In the bylaws, those are called standing committees, not elected committees.
Right.
Versus the ad hoc committees that the board deals with. So I would suggest changing it to reflect the bylaw terminology.
Yes, the elected committees actually have I believe the bylaws say if there's a vacancy, the board may appoint someone until the next election. So it's kind of covered anyway for elected committee membership.
But I'm just saying that I don't think it specifies elected. I think it's called a standing committee. In the
back Andy, that's one of the things that is inconsistent in the bylaws actually, and so consistent. And honestly, right now I can't remember which one it is, but I'll make sure that it's the same as everywhere else in the bylaws.
If you leave it at this, it needs to be congressionally elected committees.
We have a comment from Ann and Greg Sutherland.
Putting elected, I agree with what Andy just said too. It needs to be congregationally elected committee, just so it's specific and someone can't interpret it as being elected by the board or whatever. But putting elected committees totally changes the meaning of this. And I agree with this meaning with it being elected committees. It would be a real mess to have it be all committees.
Okay, thank you.
Jack?
Just to reflect what's in chat. Let's see. Marika asked, where is the list of elected and non-elected committees of UUCA? And Denise said, asked, how about using the term leadership versus using membership? Marcia Frank, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Anyway, Marcia said the list of members is in the UUCA media/procedures online. Terry said, if you look at lines 291 through 296, the wording is elected committees.
Okay.
Okay, so am I hearing then another change to make this congregational? Andy and Brad?
Elected committees are congregationally elected.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but this just makes it clear that that's what we mean. And it needs to be LY, yeah.
Mhm. Is there more discussion?
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Jack, do you have any?
I presume from what you're saying, only because Terry Newton said the wording is elected committees, but if he's and Andy is saying that this is just clarifying it even more. So I hope that's okay. Natalie asks if she left, would it break quorum? And I said no. That's it.
Okay, great. And I think that we are ready to vote on block 5. And this is with the friendly amendments in blue.
Are these all the slides for block 5, Quentin?
Oh, let me just, oh, I'm sorry. There was another one. Thank you, Alan. Okay. Okay. Let's see, we did that. I got myself mixed up about where we are. I'm sorry. Okay, so the last piece of block 5 has to do with chair responsibilities. And the changes are, of course, in yellow. So you see committee chairs are responsible for submitting the annual report. So it specifies which person on the committee. It also specifies, again, something that we already do, but just to make sure that people, understand that when they agree to be a chair, that they're also responsible for submitting a budget request each year. And that would be for our midwinter meeting. The third thing that you see here, committee chairs are responsible for establishing and/or keeping up to date all charters, policies, and procedures relevant to their work and communicating changes, et cetera, that has already been there. So essentially asking committee chairs to routinely review and keep up to date the policies that deal with the tasks and business that they are specializing in. And the committee council shall consist of chairs of elected and non-elected committees. So we wanted to add the non-elected committees. Okay, the last one here, the committee council shall consist of chairs of elected, oh, I'm sorry, that's the same thing. Extra. Here we go. So let me ask if there are comments or questions here.
Floor is open for discussion. Okay, we have a comment by Linda McBurney.
Quentin, would you go back to slide 8?
Yes.
Okay, under non-elected committees. So we're saying that you have 3 members plus 1.
Yes. This is essentially the same, the change, the 3 members was already there. The change is the ex officio person being the liaison. Essentially, this aligns it with this not being the board president. And we're establishing that liaison.
So it's a non-voting board member.
It's a non-voting board member to be the liaison of each non-elected committee.
Okay.
Do you have thoughts or concerns on that?
Well, I'm just not sure who that would be. For example, on the budget committee for the past 3 years, it's only been 2 members plus the treasurer.
Okay, and in that case, the treasurer would be this person. So I'm wondering, in order to reduce workload, this could say, I need to change the wording to including, or that's not right.
How about if we say, change it to say at least 3 members serving the congregation, and one of those members may include an ex officio.
Yes, that's it. Okay. One of those should include?
No,
I may include, because if you can have 3 members of your committee plus a non-voting board member, then that's good. But if you don't,
I agree.
If you don't change it, then you're going to have to find me another member for the budget committee.
Although I think Andy had a concern. I'm going to put that to reflect.
I just want to disagree with that.
Okay.
The fact that Linda has been operating with only 2 members has been a problem. They actually needed more people to share the workload. So we need to leave it at the 3 members plus the ex officio, the way it was written originally, and just make sure that the committees have the proper number of folks on them.
I would love to hear more discussion and people say, yes, I'll be on that committee.
Well, we've got a comment from Marika, so we might hear that. Marika?
I had a comment on, I think it's slide 7. Oh no, it must be the next one. I'm sorry.
This one? Or, 9?
Yeah. Okay, the last point on this, the one you have now. The committee council shall consist of chairs of all congregationally elected. put in the word congregationally? Because that's what we just did in the, to identify that type of committee in the last, yeah, this congregationally elected.
Does that look
And
good?
on the 8 before, number 8, I had a comment. Yeah, on the change. What is the role of a liaison? Is the liaison someone who keeps in touch with what's going on in the committee, or does that person commit to attending all the meetings? Like, until now, that liaison has been the board president and has been unrepresented on the committees, as I understand it. That is, the board president hasn't been coming to all the elected and non-elected committees. But, so my question is, when a non-voting board member agrees to be a liaison to a given committee, what is it that person promised to do?
Well, I guess it's not exactly detailed anywhere in these bylaws. We did not add that. The intent, I think this past years we've been trying to add in liaisons, is to have them, as you say, be that connection between the board and the committees to help communicate.
So you would want, and then how many liaisons, how many non-voting, ex officio non-voting board members are on the board? Because one of those will have to be represented on all the committees.
Right, at least one. And the so the committee, this might be a good time to also address that the board has tried to condense our committee structure, and to, for example, things that have to do with finances would have subgroups like pledging and fundraising and budget, but those would all be part of one group, one larger committee, and
would have one liaison.
Correct. So that would also cut if what I think I'm hearing, the concern that there's too many liaisons needed out there. This would require 7. Let me ask Alan if he, or any other board members, if they want to back me up on that, because those would be non-elected committees. And some of those, you might have the same person on 2 to 3 committees. So for example, this last year, Marcia's really been liaisoning for like 2 or 3 or more committees. So she's been attending 3 or 4 all the meetings. Yeah, pretty much. And Matt Allen served on, he was on a bunch of different committees as the treasurer.
That point is the one that I thought needed to be addressed, is that if you want a liaison to the board who attends all the meetings of non-elected committees, then you'll need to think who's gonna be burdened with that. I mean, it seems like an idea, a way to get the board to naturally know what's going on, more communication, but you have to think about how many liaisons you have and how many committees.
We already have that. And we have it plotted out, so each member, I believe, has no more than 2 liaisoning positions.
Yes. There are 7.
Okay, so you've already figured that out.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go. So I think the original wording is good. Okay. What you're saying is you want some liaison between the committees and the board.
Correct.
And you figured out how to do that.
Correct. This is what we're proposing.
So Quentin, I'm suggesting taking out what you just added, the one of which.
Okay, so how do we want to?
Leave it the way it was.
Well, but I guess I need to ask, so Linda, do you want to retract that? Or is that your friendly amendment and in that case, Andy's doesn't need to be a friendly amendment because Andy's idea is what was already presented by the board.
Yeah, I just think that it's a problem saying that committees can operate in general with just two members.
Linda, you're really breaking up for me. Could you say that again? Could you try again?
If you
Linda, if you're using the space bar to unmute, you might want to just try clicking on the microphone instead.
But
oh, better. I still see you as muted, Linda.
There we are. Sorry. What I was saying is that if you want to leave the wording as it was written without the edit, that's fine with me. But then, like I said, there's going to have to be help finding another member for at least my committee. And I'm not sure how the other committees are standing with their numbers. So that's something we'll have to look at.
Actually, we'll have to have two more because Stephen's going to be the
Yeah.
so,
Ex officio.
yeah.
Okay, so everybody on the line, hear that call for your courage and your time and your love for us. Okay, so I'm going to remove the amendment and put it back to the way it was originally proposed.
We have two more comments.
Okay, right.
One is Amanda Randolph.
Hello. I was actually going to say two things. One, I agree that it should be back to the original wording because otherwise it opens up for most committees to drop down to 2 members and 1 liaison. And I think that turns a board member into a committee member when they're not supposed to be necessarily. I know we have one in the parent group at least, and their role is primarily to just sit and listen and answer questions if we have any, but they're not necessarily part of the committee. And my other question was, what does being on the budget committee entail? Because I have no idea.
Linda, do you?
Amanda, I will send you a list of our responsibilities, and then if you want to chat, I'll be glad to do that afterwards.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, I don't want to try to railroad things through or whatever, but we are taking a long time. People are dropping out. So if we can be concise in our comments and questions and whatever, it would help move things along.
We have a comment from Catherine Przansny.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm with Linda, we've had some discussions about this. I said that I would continue to be on the budget committee with her in the upcoming year. I'm going to be off the nominating committee because Andy will take over with that. And hopefully she can guide me a little bit more. And I don't want to promise to be the chair of that committee, but I promise I will work with her and help her maybe ease the load a little bit.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, we are getting away from dealing with the substance and into issues that don't need to be discussed here.
I do need to say one thing that is just suddenly has come together for me, that you have changed the committee, the membership of the endowment committee that has its own separate resolution that would have to be voted on separately. And I'm not going to make an issue of that right now. And I don't have an objection to changing that, but I just want us to be aware that that did not follow the proper procedures, and I'll be glad to look at that in the coming year to see if we can get that in line.
Thank you.
That would be great. And just to clarify, Lynn, you said endowment, not memorial?
No, endowment has its own separate resolution that requires congregational vote to amend it or change it.
And in the realigning that we've been doing, we took that into account. The endowment committee, I think, is specified at 5 members, and we have that in the new structure that the board has been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
I'll be glad to take a look at all that. That it's probably too wordy. The resolution is probably too wordy as it is anyway. And if we need to adjust it, just let me know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think we need all, just to reiterate, we need all of the committees to make sure that they're looking at their policies and charters to update them as needed so that the board doesn't do every single one. Thank you, Lynn.
There are no more comments or questions from the attendees. Jack, is there anything from chat?
No, that's it.
Okay, so Alan, I think we're ready to vote on block 5.
We have 26 of 26 voting right now on the poll, 21 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 abstaining. So and also, wait a minute. Just a minute, Jack.
Okay.
Okay, Jack?
We have 8 yes, 3 abstain.
Okay. So the measure passes. The congregation has approved committee membership and responsibility changes to the bylaws. Thank you.
Let's see, there is one other vote, and Alan, I believe that you have, so that concludes our bylaws changes. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know that this is taking a lot longer than it would normally. We need to approve one new standing committee member, and that is Richard Dellenbeck on our Memorial Garden Committee. And you'll see that poll up on your screen now. You can go ahead and vote.
Okay. 24 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. Jack?
14 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, congregation.
Andy, if you want to circle back to the General Assembly delegate vote, I have that poll ready.
Okay, would you do that, please? I was just going to call on you to do that anyway, so.
That's Richard Dellenbeck.
Oh, in favor of you as being the.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 24 In favor? No opposed, no abstentions? Jack?
12 yes, no nays or abstentions.
Well, thank y'all. I'm going to enjoy the General Assembly starting Wednesday.
Good.
And then I will pass it back to Andy for our President's Service Award.
Okay, the reports were in the packet. I made my report basically as part of the welcome. Matt has done his probably. Don, do you or Quentin have any more comments that you would like to make in terms of your reports?
I do not, but I'm happy to take questions if there are any at our hour mark.
And I'll follow suit with Quentin.
Okay. Questions to any of us if you have them at this point, but Jack, are you seeing anything, any comments or questions?
No, nothing here.
Okay, so let's go ahead into the more fun part of recognizing special services, etc. And I'm up first. And so I'm going to bring up the President's Service Award, which should be coming up. Well, that's not the one I intended to share. Try this again. And now then I've lost, there it is. Share the screen. Hmm? Yeah. There. President's Service Award goes to Matt Allen. Matt has done an amazing job starting with the fall retreat or the board retreat in August about education on how to read things. He has kept us on the straight and narrow about approving expenses that weren't in the budget. He has, as I said, just done an amazing job for the fiduciary health of this congregation, and I wanted to formally recognize that. And when we're able to meet in person, this certificate will be presented to him at that time. And if I saw some people applauding in my screen. The next award is can you see that one?
Not yet, Andy.
Okay. I've lost my screen with everybody on it. Let me share. Well, I don't know what's going on with my computer right now. I'm trying to. Okay, what I'm going to have to do, the Unsung Hero Award, there are two of them. One of them is going to Linda McBurney. Linda has done yeoman work and as chair of the budget committee for working, adjusting the budget as needed, not adjusting the budget, but adjusting the numbers and keeping track of the numbers and keeping the board informed on how that is going, working with the board and the treasurer on keeping, on producing the budget for this coming year and finding a way to have a balanced budget. And again, that will be presented when we are able to get together again. The other Unsung Hero Award goes to Dan Cooper. Dan has been the one that assumed most of the burden on getting us up online and having the services available for us, working with a number of other people on getting the Zoom, getting the church network where it can handle the Zoom meetings and whatever. So both of these are, will have these certificates for service to the church above and beyond the call of duty. Okay, the Minister Step Up Award is Reverend Don's thing now, so go ahead.
Mindy, can you hear me? No. Okay.
I can hear
Mine
you.
are, yeah, I just don't want to butcher Michelle's name.
There.
It's Michelle Gara.
Gara, I would have done it right. Wow, that's a first. I do the Step Up Awards, and I've awarded two. Michelle Gara. She's volunteered in the pre-K room every Sunday, practically from the time she started attending church. She has been creating the pre-K room program from scratch with Mindy. Now, this is work. And Mindy observes that Michelle is thoughtful, practical, and genuinely caring. So she's deserving of the award. My second one goes to Alan George.
Yeah.
Our virtual annual meeting would not have been possible if not for Alan. And I can remember just calling Alan and saying, can you help us with this or that? And now look what's happened, Alan. I'm sorry. But and he's just been critical in all our Zoom efforts and future plans to electronically meet the new normal. And that's our goal. And so I think we've, as a 100-member church, have done very well. And I'd just like to thank both of you. I was going to say I'll mail it to you, your certificate, but Andy, we wait until church opens.
Yeah, I want the church to see this and get in-person recognition.
Okay, great.
They have truly done an outstanding job.
They really have. And so Michelle and Alan, on behalf of the congregation, we all give you our heartfelt thanks.
I wondered if right here, And I'm sorry I'm not looking at the agenda to see what's left, but I would love to see everybody's faces before I leave, just so I could wave to everybody.
Okay, soon.
I don't know if we can do that.
If you switch to gallery view, Lynn.
All I see is names.
Yes, yeah, cameras are off in webinar format.
Okay, so it's not possible.
It's a possibility.
Okay.
That's the downspin to this.
Oh.
Okay, you can wave at everybody and they see you.
And
Oh, well.
Greg, have a hand up.
Okay, the next thing on,
I really miss people.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see their faces.
The next thing on the agenda is committee chair board recognition. And I basically have done that with the Unsung Hero Award, I think. Quentin, you are next in line, I think.
Yes, I will echo Andy's thanks and also just recognize our 3 board members who are stepping off the board this year. So that includes Matt Allen and Jack Zilla and Benita Hogan. And so a special thank you to all 3 of you for all of your time and service to the board and to the congregation. We'll miss you all. The last thing that I have is to announce a gift of honor. And this gift of honor is for you, Andy. The board has typically gives a gift to the outgoing president, and we decided that a gift of honor to the church would really reflect your values and your commitment to our church. And so I am very pleased to announce a gift of honor from the board in your name for $2,400.
Gosh.
Wow. We're just so thankful for everything that you do, all your leadership and your generosity to our congregation. And we hope that you know that we appreciate you. And so we're giving it to the church.
That is absolutely perfect. And the camera does not show the tears in my eyes.
I can hear it. Well, we love you, Andy, and we thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. And we'll continue to do.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
No. Right. And so I think we are done with the business of the meeting. And I'm pleased to turn it over to Don for our closing words.
And my closing words are about 4 pages long. I'm kidding you. It's from David Bonbaum. We are here dedicated to the proposition that beneath all our differences, behind all our diversity, there's a unity that binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. And as we pause in silent witness to this unity, I want you to think of the congregation in the same way, the unity of this congregation. So I just ask for a 3-second pause. Amen and blessed be.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple of words before I officially adjourn the meeting. I want to say again how much I've enjoyed working with this board. They have been amazing. I have said on several occasions, it's the best board that I have worked with since I've been a member of this congregation starting in 1992. I have appreciated the congregation's trust in me, asking me to serve as your president. You've made it easy because whenever I've asked for help or volunteers, you have come through for me, and I appreciate it. And I can't tell you how pleased I am to be turning this over to Quentin. Not that that I'm shedding the responsibility, but because I knew Quentin, but not well before this year. She's going to be terrific, folks. So I'm pleased to be able to turn this over to somebody who is totally competent, who is going to move us forward and help us become the church that we want to be. So Quentin, it's yours. Thank you.
Quentin. Oh.
And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Oh, Andy, I want to do what you did, but I'll do it quickly and I'll read it straight off the report. I'd like to say that that working with our staff has been a real joy. Laura truly holds the center together. Mindy has created a special place for our children and their parents. And David, oh, the music. It's a privilege to sit near the piano during services, or at least in our former life. Actually, I sit next to him anyway. You already have the staff you need to make your next called minister a very effective one. I've enjoyed working with our president, Andy Reese. It's just been a joy. His insights have been very helpful to me. The board of trustees has been strong and unafraid to sort through and decide on very difficult times and issues. And last, thanks to all of you in the congregation, because we are in this together.
Thank you. I think that is the final words before we adjourn. We are in this together. So take care and see you online next Sunday listening to Dawn's service.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Enjoy the sunshine. Get out of your house.